Good morning, E-Town. Scott Bramley here, coming to you from one of our classrooms behind our new teacher workstations for our hybrid learning model. I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about the hybrid learning model and some of the things that you can expect and answer some of the questions that have come up. But before I get into that, I really want to thank everybody for all that you've been doing during remote learning, during enhanced e-learning throughout this entire year. This has been one of the most challenging years of my career, and I know several of you have communicated that same sentiment to me. And I just want you to all know that I and everyone at ETHS really appreciates everything that you've done to try to make this the best experience possible for all students and for our community. Today, I wanted to try to help frame a little bit of what the expectations are for in the hybrid, what some of the parameters are, and how you can envision what teaching and learning may look like in the hybrid. I'm going to talk about one model. I'm going to talk about an example. It is not the model. It is not necessarily what you have to do, but I think it's helpful if you understand a little bit about what the expectations are, and then you can see how you can tailor the experience within your classroom based on the expectations as they've been communicated. Several of you have asked questions, fantastic questions about the classroom during a pandemic with the current health and safety guidelines. And it demonstrates to me that you're thinking so critically about how to best serve your students. And again, those are the professionals who work at ETHS, and I really do value and appreciate that. I'm gonna reference some notes now for a moment about the hybrid experience. And I just wanted to communicate that I know this is a challenging time and it is very difficult to think about how you're going to teach in a classroom that is not what you're accustomed to. But as we've said throughout this whole experience, you are all fantastic teachers of face-to-face instruction. You have been doing that for years. You know how to do that. And even those of you who have not been in the profession for years are really adept at serving our students' needs when we're face-to-face. This summer, you had to transition again after an emergency in the spring. This summer, we transitioned to how can we have a better experience for students in e-learning as we started the school year remotely. Everyone has stepped up to that challenge. Everyone has excelled. You are doing fantastic jobs as e-learning teachers in this environment. And I really, again, thank you for all that effort. I thank everyone who's been supporting you as well, from the instructional coaches to the department chairs, to the ed tech team, to the IIT department, to the buildings and grounds, operations, nutrition services, everyone in this building who has been serving our community during this time. I think I want to stress community, and I'm going to continue to stress community because that's really where we're at. We're starting afresh in many ways, but it doesn't have to be overwhelmingly daunting. It doesn't have to be a complete restart. We know what we've been doing has been working for the majority of our students, and we know if it's not working, we're trying to resolve that on an individual differentiated level, as we always do. And so I just want to stress that although this is a transition, it is not necessarily a restart, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a restart. But if we focus on community, if we focus on connection, if we focus on relationship building and students' social emotional learning and well-being, I think we can capitalize on the opportunities within the classroom for those students who felt comfortable enough to select in-person instruction. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, some of the expectations and answer some of the questions that you've asked. I hope you've all had a chance now to review the updated hybrid FAQs that were published yesterday based on the questions we received at the all staff meeting, as well as questions we've received since that time. Many of your questions, I hope, will be answered through those FAQs, but I'm going to highlight a few of them today that really talk about in-person instruction, most specifically for teachers. So throughout this mini course, you're going to see several of our colleagues from the Ed Tech department bring you back to the e-learning academy that you participated in this summer to try to have a continuity of professional learning from the summer when we were transitioning to e-learning into now this spring while we're transitioning into this hybrid in-person instruction. And I want to emphasize that even with the percentage of students who signed up, the majority of your students during each period on any given day will continue to access their education remotely. So we have to consider how do I still serve the needs of all my students? And I know that that is an extremely challenging task that everyone is working to figure out. And again, I don't know that we'll find a perfect solution. I've yet to find any educator in my networks or that I've talked to on any blogs, in any communication out there that says hybrid instruction is the way to go. So we know that this isn't the most effective academic instructional model, but we do also know that we have students who wanted to come back into this building even during this time, and they need support, just like our students who are learning at home continue to need our support. So I want to talk today a little bit about how that might look. I want to emphasize that the expectation in the hybrid from the district is an important piece of information. And again, sometimes when you say an expectation or you communicate one thing, as an example, people hear that that is 100% the expectation, you have to do it this way, and anything outside of that doesn't work. I just want to communicate clearly today that I'm going to reference what you could do, what you may do in this scenario, and give you some parameters to work within based on our current health and safety guidelines. You have flexibility, you have the continued autonomy as a classroom teacher, you have your sound professional judgment, and you are all phenomenal teachers who have really excelled during enhanced e-learning. That will continue into the hybrid instructional model because we all care so much about our students. And so if you wanted, I think you could think about this as I'm transitioning into this model, but I don't have to overhaul what I'm doing. If you think about how you can use what you've learned and developed over the past several months to become an even more effective teacher through e-learning, that is exactly the right starting point. If you transition into the classroom with the few students you might have any given day, any given period, with the majority of your students still online, and you consider how can I deliver the instruction? How can I meet the objectives of my course? How can I engage students in the experiences and learning opportunities that I think are important for them to learn the content, but also to develop the skills that they need in the course? And you think about how can I deliver that to all students? That's going to be in some form of remote learning that you've been doing already. So if that's your starting point, I want you to know that that's the right starting point. It's great. That is effective teaching in the hybrid. There is no expectation that you overhaul everything you've done in a few weeks to try to do something completely brand new. However, if you wanted to try some new things, if you wanted to think about how I could capitalize a little bit differently on the students' experience in person, you're welcome to do that. And I'm going to share a couple parameters for that. I think that when you think about students being in the building, they're coming back into this building, and for some of them, they're coming here for the first time in person. It's the start of a new school year for them. And so what do we focus on at the beginning of a school year? Connection, relationships, building community, well-being. I can't learn from you if I don't know you, I don't feel seen by you, I don't trust you, and I don't feel that you see me. That's an important piece here. Students are going to have a rough transition, potentially. We, colleagues, teachers, staff, are going to have a difficult transition. Some of us have not been in this building for almost an entire year. And so as you think about what do I prioritize in the classroom, I really encourage you to think about student well-being, connection. How can you have some of those conversations, get into the interest, have the little joke, the things that you used to be able to do with all your students in the classroom as they came into the room and as you were working with them. Now you'll be able to do with some of your students. And I think that will help you and them really think about, well, what was the benefit of this hybrid? And again, I'll say, I don't know that there's an instructional delivery model benefit, but there's certainly a connection and interpersonal community building benefit. And so I think if you stress that, and if you can focus on that, I think that would be amazing for our students and will maybe help think about, okay, how will all learners engage in my curriculum? Well, one way is that they'll continue to engage the way that they have been. And I might modify that slightly for the students in the classroom because they could be working on skills in a different format potentially, but everybody could be learning the same skills and demonstrating their knowledge of those skills and progressing in the curriculum through the same activities, but they might look slightly different. And I think we've done that for our students for years. That's differentiation. That's how we support all learners in our classes. And so again, if you can anchor yourself and you're thinking in those same methodologies that you know have been successful for you over the years, I think they translate well. And again, you'll modify slightly here and there once you have students in the classroom. But I think one of the challenges is that you really don't know what you don't know yet. And so as you continue to work through this, and as we get closer to the hybrid, and once it starts, your thinking on this will continue to evolve. I want to take a real quick moment to thank some of our colleagues who put together the SEL toolkit for teachers to integrate SEL into their curriculum. And that's Aaron Becker, Mark Van Drasick, Carla Clark, Raquel Lopez, and Taya Kinsey. Their toolkit, which has been copied on the supports, it's on the reopening plan, it's been in a lot of communication throughout this year, really might help when we're thinking about how can I focus on social emotional learning with the students that I have in the classroom, and also the students who are at home. They can engage in those activities just in a different way. And again, I think that's a key to all this. So I wanted to just leave that part with this idea. If you're doing what you've been doing in e-learning as you transition into the hybrid, that's the expectation. Within that, if you think about some different things you want to try out, that's wonderful. But you're doing a great job and you are serving our students if you continue to do what you've been doing. It's been successful. And the difference now is that some of the students will be able to be in person with you. And so as I think about that, I want to ask myself and reflect on what can I do with that opportunity? I have an opportunity with some of my students who will be in person with me. What does that look like for me and for us and for their needs? And again, our students are our curriculum. We access certain disciplines and materials and thinking and content to help them grow and learn. And so as you think about this, what do your students need, specifically the students you know you'll be serving in person based on their needs and what you know this school year? And so that's what I wanted to help you think through that type of focus. I also wanted to share a couple of the parameters. There's been a lot of questions about what we can do. And I think if you keep at the forefront, our goal is to keep everyone safe and healthy. Our goal is to be as safe and as possible during this time. And so there are some guidelines that are in place that are important. In the classroom, you have to wear your mask. I'm wearing my mask for this video because that's what you're going to be living. This is the experience. So you have to wear your face covering. Students have to wear their face coverings in the classroom at all times. You have to maintain 6 feet of physical distance. I know there's a lot in the media right now about 3 feet and the CDC changing things, and we might get to a point this summer or in the fall where maybe that's possible and maybe that's the right move. But right now, the guidelines really say 6 feet or 3 feet for kids and for fully vaccinated adults. I don't know who's vaccinated. I'm not rolling the dice on who's vaccinated. The district isn't doing that. We are going to maintain the 6 feet of social physical distancing because that's the most that's the best approach so that we can ensure safety as best as we can. So in your classroom, if you think about that, as long as your students are 6 feet apart at a minimum, are wearing their face coverings, and are using good hand washing, hand sanitizing behaviors, you can do things in the classroom. You can walk away from this workstation. You can go out into the classroom. Your students can communicate with each other. You can turn the desks to have a conversation as long as you're following the guidelines. I do encourage you though to try to limit those things and think about purpose. Whenever you're making an instructional decision, it should always be about the purpose. What am I trying to accomplish? What do I want students to know and be able to do? And so if we're having a discussion and the purpose is to communicate and have discourse, then yeah, turn the desks, have the students stand up and face each other, but just make sure they're maintaining the social and physical distancing in the guidelines. That's a key point. A couple other common questions that have come up. Can I move away from the plexiglass? The plexiglass is here as a universal measure. It's a universal safety measure. Very early on in the pandemic, outfitting with plexiglass for the aerosol nature of the transmission of this virus. If there was a sneeze or a cough or something like that, that's why the plexiglass was there. But if you're moving away from the plexiglass, that's fine. You don't have to be behind plexiglass. That's available to you as a universal, just like this workstation is available to you as a universal technology tool. However, you do have to maintain your distance and you do have to maintain wearing your face covering. A couple other questions that have come up. Can we walk around the room? Yes, absolutely. I just answer that within the guidelines. Can you have time in the classroom where students are not on Zoom or on Meets or engaging in remote learning? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Just like right now in e-learning, where you can have students doing an asynchronous task or different groups of students doing different components of a project or different aspects of a lesson, that's absolutely still available. And if you think about it, you have a natural group within your classroom. That's one of your groups. And so if you've been using grouping, as you've been using conferencing, you still have that available to you. And I want to reemphasize, we've said this all along, that you do not have to teach bell to bell in e-learning and or ever. So you can have students engage in an activity without direct instruction. You can have one set of students doing an asynchronous task while another set of students is doing something synchronously with the teacher. You could have pre-recorded videos that one group of students is looking at or the whole class is. There's a myriad of ways that you can approach that, but the key question is, can it be different for students in person and remote? And the answer is yes. The key here, though, is we want to make sure that all students can access their educational opportunities. And so as long as we have a way, regardless of the medium, for all students to be able to access their learning, that's the key. And again, you can separate different skills. You can have students focus on different ways to demonstrate their learning or to engage in those skills, but everybody has to have opportunity to access it. So that would be the key there. Can you have students participate in demos or live experiences? The answer is yes, as long as you're within the current health and safety guidelines, considering that all students can access the education opportunity and work to learn and demonstrate the same knowledge of a specific skill. That's a key part there. You may have students in different groups working on different aspects, like I said. This may take the form of roles. It may be some level of rotation of skills. But using the available technologies, you can create opportunities for in-person and remote students to access demos. Absolutely. The students who are remote can still see the demo through your teleconferencing, just like the students in person can see the demonstration live and in person. Another key question that comes up has been, can we take the students outside? And the answer to that is yes. And I don't have the details on the process for that right now, but our outside spaces, as long as they're available, will be utilized. I know that our physical education classes will definitely be utilizing our outside spaces as they do every spring, weather permitting. And so, yes, we will have those opportunities throughout the day. And so those were just a couple of the frequent questions that we've received around the classroom. I think the big things are to help you plan is that, yes, you can move away from this desk. Yes, you can have students in different configurations in the classroom. But again, the key there is we want to make sure that we maintain the physical distance. Dr. Campbell shared with me recently that as he's been talking to other principals and other assistant superintendents in districts that have been in hybrid for the majority of this year, the #1 place where they see transmission is when people come together super closely. And it's our natural inclination to support a kid side by side, kneel down. We've been taught this. It's caring. It shows our humanity. It's a way for us to show students that the power dynamic can be lost and we're here together learning. Unfortunately, it's not safe. So as much as we can avoid that, because the guidelines say we're supposed to maintain 6 feet of distance, please do not go right up next to a kid, sit down next to a kid and start working on the paper with the kid. Those things are going to put you and the student at a potential for transmission, and those would not be allowable things. So within those parameters of the social distancing, wearing face coverings, you have some flexibility that you can envision what this might look like for you. I also want to emphasize, if you don't want to leave this workstation and you want to teach from behind the plexiglass, that is perfectly acceptable too. And neither one is right or wrong. Both are effective, both will allow you to serve students, and both are expected within this hybrid. You can do either one of those things. You should not feel like you have to do one or the other, because either one, as long as you're comfortable and it works for your curriculum and for the purpose of your learning activity, is what matters. I want to close really quickly by just saying thank you again. I hope that you will engage in the rest of this mini course, and I believe that it will help assuage some fears, reduce some of the anxiety, and allow you to really think about how you can do this. We have 7 weeks of the hybrid learning. And so I really want to emphasize that what you've been doing up to this point can still work. You might have some slight modifications, but you don't have to overhaul. If you want to overhaul, the sky's the limit for you, and we're here to support you. But either situation is what is expected and would be fantastic for our students' experience. I also want to thank a couple other people, the EdTech team. I want to thank them for producing the rest of this mini course and for partnering with me and the instructional coaches and the department chairs to really make sure that we had something we could put out there to help with this transition. We have additional supports that will continue. The instructional coaches are still here to help you. The EdTech team is still here to help you. Your department chairs will be focusing on supporting more of the specific nuances of your courses and specific areas of the content. So please be partnering with them. You have each other. We are a fantastic community of learners and teachers. As a community of learners ourselves, our best resource is each other. Please share with each other. Please share your thinking. Be vulnerable. Ask questions of each other. Say you don't know, because none of us know. We're all figuring it out. And I'm here as well. I'm available as a resource if you ever wanted to connect with me to think through and ask any questions. So the rest of this mini course will present strategies to adapt your current instructional practices to the hybrid model. I hope that you enjoy it. And again, we are Evan Strong, and I thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that this has helped, and I am still available to help throughout the next 7 weeks. Thank you so much, ETHS.